So, hello everyone. I'm State Senator Jamie Eldridge, and welcome to another edition of Uplifting Voices. This is a podcast that I actually started, I think, just as probably when the pandemic began, really to get a chance to hear from leaders, from people that are doing interesting work in my district that either are often represented in the media or stories are often are not told and really happy. And there's been a bit of a delay on Uplifting Voices for several months as we've settled back into the state house and everything. But really happy to bring back Uplifting Voices, interviewing someone who I consider a friend, someone who I really admire in her determination to seek becoming a professional, Dr. Thamires Nunes. So, Dr. Nunes, if I can call you that for perhaps the first time since I've at least seen you, congratulations on becoming a veterinarian, and great to
Thank you,
see you.
thank
Thanks
you.
for willing to come on. Yeah. Uh,
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Jamie. Yeah, like Jamie had said, he has been a really close family friend for many, many years. A great advocate for our community, a great advocate for the immigrant community as well, and just overall such a great role model. And I really appreciate and am honored to be here for you all.
well, thank you so much. And before we started recording, you were just saying, so tomorrow is your first day as a veterinarian at the Veterinarian Emergency Group in Newton. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes. So the long, long journey of becoming a veterinarian starts tomorrow, officially, this new life, which is super exciting. I'm going to be starting a training program with the Veterinary Emergency Group to be through what they call the NERD program. So new ER doctor. So it'll be an intense 6 month training on how to be like how to specialize our skills that we've learned in vet school, to be an ER doctor and to help, as our motto says, help people and their pets when they need it most.
That's great. That's great. And
Yeah,
congratulations. And I know we're gonna get into a lot of that. But I know that we first met, and I think I really met you through your sister Joyce, when I think 5 or 6 years ago, your family, which owns the Maynard Pizza House, now the Maynard Pizza Bar in Maynard, one of the best places to have pizza, highly recommend. We're helping out a worker who got tied up in the immigration system, and held a fundraiser for him, and I was did my best to help him, and that's how I met the whole family, and that's how I met you. And I just really I think your family is like one of the most welcoming, kindest families I know in the district, and appreciate all you do for your community. So
oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, a lot of people go into veterinary medicine wanting to focus on the animals, but I really went into it because it is my way to serve my community and my population and to be able to help people really through ways of their pets. And as my mom has always taught me, like if I have anything, it's to give to others. But yeah, like Jamie had says, I am from Brazil. I grew up in São Paulo capital in Brazil, and immigrated to the US in 2001. My dad came in with a working visa, and that's when we kind of started our journey here in the United States. And
if I could
as
ask, why did your parents decide to move to the U.S.? Just curious. What was the
Sure.
motivation?
So my dad had connections here with a company that had, I guess, affiliates in Brazil where he used to work at. So he had friends that had moved over here with this specific company that was sponsoring immigrants to come and work. So he decided to jump on the bandwagon. He left my youngest sister at 6 months of age. I was about 3 or 4, and then my sister was around that same age. So we were very, very young, and his goal was to come here for a couple of years to work, to make some extra money, and then to ultimately come back to Brazil. But within 2 years or so of that experience here, he decided that I think the best plan would really be to have the whole family come here and
Mhm.
see if we could make a life here as well, especially since he was in the process of potentially able to get legal status at one point, so we would be able to come in legally, and eventually be able to work our way up to a permanent residency, and then, ultimately, obviously, citizenship. So that's when we came in about 2001. Obviously, we didn't know English or anything, and my mom brought all three of us here, and we kind of started assimilating in American life. We grew up in Maynard, which is a very small town, but very
Came right to
cohesive, I
Maynard.
guess, in a way.
You didn't
I'm
live
sorry.
anywhere else. You came right to Maynard.
No, we have not lived. We lived a very small amount of time in Marlboro, but that was another story. But yeah, so we've lived in Maynard all of our lives, and we were able to assimilate in the schools, and that's when we started our process and our journey of continuing to see about getting permanent residency. And unfortunately, as with many other people, even though we came the legal route, it took a very, very painstakingly long time to
Yes.
get that legal status. My grandmother on my dad's side died, and he wasn't able to see her, which was a really hard time for all of our family. Obviously, we had my mom's parents, my grandparents on her side that were also aging, and she wasn't able to see them for a very long time. And just, obviously missing home and missing family members and stuff like that. And of course, being, I guess, undocumented, but on the process of being documented, so might as well have been undocumented. Um, really started to hit us when me and my sister turned 16, and I tried to get my driver's license and wasn't able to, and then
Mhm.
my sister actually found some loopholes and was able to when she turned 16, so then I quickly
Huh.
was able to. But
Okay.
yeah, that was an intense period, but I think it really, really hit us when we were starting to apply for college, and realizing that financial aid wasn't going to be an option for us
Right.
because um obviously we didn't have a green card yet, and some
Hmm.
schools were not willing to let us get in-state tuition. Other schools wouldn't even let us apply. But for me, I had kind of my heart set in something very specific, and that was because when
Yeah.
I was in 2008, our upstairs tenant actually left a cat behind.
Huh.
Just like left a little, probably less than a year old cat behind, and we begged and pleaded my mom, and she finally let us keep it.
Mhm.
And after a very, very painstakingly long day trying to pick out names for this cat, we decided to name it Jovi after Bon Jovi, of course. um,
That's great.
and that was my eighth grade, and I guess within that, like, eighth, ninth, 10th grade, I decided, like, this is it, I want to be a veterinarian. Like, I love this is great. And we had never grown up with any pets. I never even had.
That's what I
I
was
was afraid
wondering.
of
Yeah.
dogs. Yeah,
Okay.
I was afraid of dogs for the longest time. My younger sister Joyce will never let me forget that there was this yellow lab that showed up in our house one day, just like some lab got lost, and I was so petrified of the thing, I stayed locked up in my room all day long until the animal control officer came and picked it up. But like, yeah, after, like, in those early days of high school, I was like, nope, I'm going to be a veterinarian.
Mhm.
And I started, getting myself into all the animal shelters that I could. And my mom would drive me to Sudbury, where Save a Dog is, so I could like walk the dogs and stuff like that. She would go to TJ Maxx and I would go volunteer. And then I would, like, I don't know, find whatever other extracurriculars I could, like put myself into all these AP classes,
Mhm.
just because I knew that getting into vet school was going to be really, really hard long term. So I wanted to, like, get as much experience as I could. And yeah, it was such a hurdle trying
Mhm.
to balance, like, this challenge of getting into vet school, but also, like, realistically not even knowing how I was going to pay for undergrad,
Sure.
because I wanted
Sure.
to go to this college called Becker College, which unfortunately died with COVID.
Closed then.
But
Yeah. Very sad.
yep, Becker closed. It was very upsetting. It was one of two couple schools that closed. But it was a private school, so obviously it was very expensive, and I had no means of getting financial aid. So I honestly, like, I think I sent in the $300 deposit without really thinking about it too much, just kind of trusting that it would all work out. And fortunately it did. I think I got a bunch of scholarships to pay for my first year. I drove an hour to get to school every single day because obviously I couldn't afford to live on campus. I got a bunch of other like under the table jobs, working at different restaurants and babysitting and whatever. And I racked up some credit card debt, and that was like first year.
Hmm.
And then the other years of school, I applied for the alumni scholarship. And that's when, with them, I was very candid and open. I was like, hey, I'm not documented. If I don't get these scholarships, I literally can't come back to school.
Yep.
And I was very well known on campus, and I did a lot of things. And I was like in every club and organization and won a bunch of awards and stuff. So
What were some
fortunately,
of the things you were
they gave
involved with? What
I
was,
was
I'm just
involved.
curious.
Oh, so yeah, of course. So I actually got the Outstanding Freshman of the Year award that first year because I was very involved in campus activities, like the campus activities board to host different events on campus. I was also very involved in admissions. So I was in what is it called? Orientation leader. I was in the pre-vet club, and I was like opening up another club to help out like environmental things and stuff like that. So I like basically anything that I could get my foot in the door, I did. So a lot of the administration knew me and kind of like heard my name around. So when I first wrote my letter being like, hey, like I have this dream, I want to go to vet school. I have this cat, he changed my life. Like this, he's the reason why I want to go to vet school. And in a lot of ways, like this cat and my school opportunities are very similar because it was a small thing that came into my life, but turned out to be so incredibly amazing, just like me joining this institution. And they fell for it more or less. And I won the top scholarship that first year. And then second year, again, I applied and I'm like, I'm still illegal. I still don't have documentation. I still want to go to vet school. Please help me out. So they did it again, and I won that top scholarship award again that second year. And then third year, fortunately, in 2015, and I won't get into the weeds of it, but more or less the lawyer that my dad had picked for us to, handle our
Mhm.
documentation processes, he apparently had frauded his way through a lot of different other people's
Mm.
cases. So
It's
because of
sadly
that,
very common in a lot of immigrant
yeah.
communities is lawyers taking advantage of immigrants.
Mhm.
Yep.
So he was known as the best lawyer that would get you a green card very, very quickly. And of course, my dad went with him, and he defrauded he, was in a lot of hot water, and everybody under his, I don't know how you say, his representation, I guess,
Sure.
got their green card denied. So that was in maybe like 2010, 2011-ish. So we were in the process of reapplying through a different lawyer and all that stuff. And finally in 2015, which was almost 14 years after my dad had initially applied, we got that letter that our green cards finally were approved and we were going to be citizens, and I could finally get access to financial aid. But like by then I was going to be a senior in college, and I'm like, screw this. If I hadn't had student loans all of this time, then I'm not getting student loans now. So again, I applied for my freaking
Wow.
scholarships, and like, hey, like help a girl out. We have this pizzeria. My family works really hard, blah, blah, blah. I still have this cat. I still want to go to vet school. Maybe I was toying at that point, like maybe I should do something with human medicine because like by like the last year of school, I was like, oh my God, vet school is really expensive. Do I really want to do this? Like, is it going to be worth it financially for me long term? So I was kind of like doubting a lot of things in my mind and not really sure. So I wrote that in my letters. And once again, lo and behold, I got the top alumni scholarship for a third year in a row.
Wow.
And
So if not for those
by then I was able,
scholarships, would
yes, no, it was very
college.
much due to
Yeah.
those scholarships that I went to school. And by then, the last year, I also was able to get access to Pell Grants. So that kind of helped bridge the gap. And I think I graduated with like maybe $3,000 in credit card debt, and that was it. And that was, a private school, very expensive, driving every year, every day to get there.
Yep.
And of course, my parents helped out a little bit here and there with
Sure.
like some of the gaps, very minimal. Obviously they're very much middle class, so nobody can afford college these days outright. But yeah, I graduated with about $3,000 in debt, and it was wonderful. So
I mean,
that,
that's
but
better
at
than
that
most
point,
Americans. Yeah, yeah,
oh yeah, absolutely. And I look back and like obviously the fight that my dad had of not seeing his mom pass away, and like that time that we spent away from our grandparents, like we'll never get that time back. But I think if it wasn't for that struggle, I would have had undergrad debt, and I would have maybe not have worked as hard to, be debt free. So in that way, it was kind of a blessing in disguise.
yeah.
That, I had to do what I had to do to get it paid off. But at that point, I graduated from Becker College with
Mm-hmm.
a bachelor's degree in veterinary science with a pre-vet concentration
Mm-hmm.
and a minor in global citizenship, because Becker was very big in like helping out the next and be the change in the world and all this stuff, and just like learning about things beyond like your own backyard. So I did that as well. And that's kind of when I was kind of having some soul searching, being like, okay, I don't want to go into vet school right now. It's too expensive and not make
Okay.
enough money. So like, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I decided to go into research. So I worked a
Okay.
couple years in biotech.
Mm.
So I worked for a couple big companies out in the Boston Seaport District. I worked for Vertex.
Oh,
I
okay.
worked for
Mm-hmm.
a company called Charles River, which was based out in Worcester. And then I actually had a conference. I went to a conference to talk about compassion fatigue. And ironically, this conference was in Ohio. So I flew out to this conference and I met a veterinarian there who more or less like talked me into it. And he's like, like you should really still apply to vet school. Like you really love this stuff. And I always had worked part-time as a veterinary nurse. I had still volunteered at cat shelters. I was always fostering cats and stuff. And I very much stayed very close to that profession. And then he was like, it's really not as bad as you think. Like, I have this much debt, I'm paying it off. It's not that bad. With the credentials that you have of all that you've worked with so far, like, you're gonna get in easy. Like, and I'm just like, no, only girls that go to Thailand to play with elephants get into vet school. And then he's like, no, your grades are fine. Like, just apply, get in, and you'll be great. So I was like, okay, if you say so. And of course, it helped that he was very attractive, and I was like, oh, great, yes, got to do it. So that's when I came back, and I was just starting a new job. So basically, I started a week into starting a new job. I'm like, oh yeah, so by the way, I know you guys just hired me for this bunch of money, and like you're really excited about this position, but I'm applying to vet school, and hopefully we'll be gone in a year. And the vet who I worked with was like, yes, do it. Like, I totally help you. Yes, let's get this together. And
Great.
he was incredible. He was actually also an immigrant himself. He was from Hong Kong, and
Oh, wow.
yes, he's from Boxborough, great guy. And he helped me through all of my vet school applications. He looked me straight in the eye and he's like, Thamires, this is garbage, start over. And I'm like, okay. So he was just such a great mentor to help me get to vet school. And fortunately, I applied to 5 schools. I got
Yeah.
interviews at all 5.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I was waitlisted in 2 schools. So I was waitlisted at Tufts and Washington State, and then I was accepted into 3 vet schools, Michigan, Purdue, and Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
And Michigan was probably the most exciting because out of 900 applicants, they accepted 20, and I
Wow.
was one of
My goodness. Yep.
the
Mm-hmm.
So vet school is extremely competitive to get into. There's very few schools, a lot of people wanting to get in, and it's definitely a job of passion, not as much for money, but definitely the passion is out there. A lot of kids, we say there's a lot of in utero vets, people that, ever since they were babies want to go to vet school. But I was very lucky to have the choice of which school to go to.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked Ohio State, which was the cheapest, probably one of the closer ones, and
Okay. Mm-hmm.
now is ranked as the top 3rd vet school in the country, which is really
Wow.
awesome.
That's great.
Back then it was number 4, but now it's number 3. And like it was nice because even though I had to leave home, well, first of all, Tufts waitlisted me, so I had no choice. Even though I had to leave home, it was going to go to Ohio of all places. it was going to be for like a really top-notch institution that I knew I could afford long term. And I had a game plan of, what I was going to do financially. I had a bunch of money saved up from working for 3 years, and like I knew I was going to work during vet school and all of these things. And I
Mhm.
was just like, you know what, let's do it, man. Let's do it. And I honestly, like, my sisters didn't believe that I was going until I was in my car. I packed up my sick cancer cat and I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And I didn't believe in myself until I got there. And my boyfriend at the time, drove me, and he's like, "Are you sure you want to do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" And then after he left, I was like, "Oh crap, like I'm actually doing this now."
Right, you're
Like
there
I
alone, right,
I know I was there by myself in a state that has very few immigrants. And it was really just, oh my God, it was crazy. And
yeah.
obviously it was pre-pandemic, so we didn't know of anything that was going to happen in the world. But what kind of helped out was, yeah, I had a lot of preconceived notions about Columbus and Ohio and like what my 4 years were going to be. But one of the very first professors that I met in vet school was actually Brazilian.
Oh,
And
and
what I found out later was that there was a crew of them. There's about 6 professors there
huh,
that were
wow.
Brazilian, and that Ohio was really kind of, like Ohio State in specific, was really good about having a very, very diverse staff
Wow,
in that
I did not
way.
know
And
that.
it was just really nice to see myself in some of those professors and like recognizing them by their last names and like getting to talk to them in Portuguese and like being like, so where do you guys find like Brazilian food around here? And where can I get this and that? And like, they just really helped me because I was one of 2 Brazilians that they've ever had. So it was just
What,
really fun to be able
what's the
to,
diversity of the student body? Yeah, or the veterinarian.
yeah, very much. So veterinarians are the only profession where male, white, cisgendered individuals are the minority. So it was a very,
Yeah.
very large percentage of white females, but there was quite a handful of Latinx people. There were some Black individuals. I had a few friends that were Asian of different cultures. Obviously, a lot of members in the LGBTQ community. And it kind of also taught me a lot about just like not judging people from face value. Because when I first went in to interview there, the dean was an old white man. So I was like, well, okay, whatever. Like, old white man, like that's kind of lame. I guess we'll deal with it. But then like a couple weeks in, I found out that old white man is married to a Black male from New Orleans.
Oh,
So,
wow. Oh,
and he is very, very liberal and very much like welcoming and super passionate about like just social problems, I guess, in the world, and diversity and inclusion, and
mm,
just was such an amazing figure to get to talk to and get to know through my 4 years. And like really showed me that, like, like can't judge a book by its cover. And I had such an incredible time at Ohio State. Even through the pandemic, I really enjoyed Columbus. I learned not to leave Columbus. Did
yeah,
that once, didn't do it again. So I learned that
in Columbus.
Columbus itself
Yep,
was safe, it was nice, it was a lot of my people, a lot of good food and stuff. I had a wonderful time. But
that
yeah,
is
no,
great.
did not Columbus.
And I'm curious. I'm glad to hear that Ohio State was so welcoming, and that
Mhm.
your classmates are fairly diverse. Because I think that was one of my questions, just the medical profession in general, or veterinarian profession is what are the barriers for immigrants, for people of color, as far as accessing that kind of professional medical degree?
Yeah, yeah. So, oh my God, there's so many. So, veterinarians in specific are actually the whitest health profession. And I think a part of that is because a lot of like vet med people don't do it for the money. They really do it as a passion project. And of course, you can do it affordably, like I feel like I did, and you can make money, but it is a very much an industry where you have to be more or less privileged to go to. And a lot of the expectations around being able to get into vet school involve shadowing hours, involve trips, or research. It's not things that like people can do if they're on a budget or they have to work for
If
a
you're
living or
working
if they have to
class, there's going to
sustain.
be barriers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of like we can't do a lot of like these things that make your application look nice and fancy involve money. Um, and
Mhm.
again, like if you're looking at the logistics and the financial payoff of going to vet school, sometimes it's just not there for the non-privileged class, I guess.
Mhm.
And that doesn't mean that there isn't, I mean, like not everybody loves animals, but the love of animals really infiltrates every, socioeconomic class, race, status, everybody.
Mhm.
You know,
Oh yeah.
there's no barriers to loving your pets. So there's a lot of people out there that want to become vets and will become phenomenal vets. But because it is so hard to get into vet school, that sometimes you need money and privilege to get in. And I found that Ohio State, by having a more holistic view of their applications, because like anybody theoretically can get like a high GPA or high SAT scores or a high GRE scores if you have the resources and finances to get your private tutors and to get this and this and that. Like you can make your way up to those grades. Or again, like we are saying, if you just in undergrad are focused on getting good grades and you don't have to work and you don't have to worry about student loans and all that stuff, you can get good grades much easier. So because Ohio State kind of said, okay, if you have this bare cutoff of grades above that, like I don't care what you have,
Mhm.
compared to some other vet schools, it really made it so people that do have strictly working experience or people
Mhm.
that have experiences that are beyond just like unpaid shadowing hours have a better shot at getting in. And I think that's just so important for people to recognize, because when I was applying, like before I thought of applying to vet school, I thought that only, I could only go to vet school if I could afford to take all these like international trips abroad and do all of this other
Right.
stuff to zhuzh up my applications. But no, and of course, like I didn't get into all the vet schools I applied to. Like some of them were more academically, I guess they wanted better grades than what I had. Um, but I did get into three of the top schools, and I think that really shows that sometimes it's not just grades, it's how hard you work and how much you want it and the stuff that you can put in and work experience, even in a pizzeria or restaurant stuff, like people
Mhm.
skills, especially in the veterinary profession, is so superior to any academic scholastic knowledge that you may have, because I can know everything in the world. If I can't talk to a pet owner and have them trust me enough to be able to do those things or speak in a way of compassion, like I'm not going to get anywhere.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
just definitely like people skills 100%. And that does shine through in interviews and stuff. So I'm very
Yeah,
confident that like even
that's very
even
clear, even from
less
this interview.
privileged uh population, I guess, really shines through when it comes to people skills. And that's when they get those coveted acceptance letters to a lot of schools.
And this is such an important story to tell, because I think the thing that I'm always focused on is for the wave of immigrant families, for immigrants, say the past 30 years, right, which is very different nations of origin than 100 years ago in the US. What do communities, what does government, what does school need to do to better support immigrant families so that the next generation, so your generation, can do better than your parents, which is the sort of
Yeah.
history or
Oh,
American
it's
dream,
cool.
even if it's illusory a little bit, of the US. What needs to be done better? And I'm curious, your experience, your sister's experience in Maynard,
Oh.
schools, the community. What was that like? Because Maynard, you're right, it's a small town. It's a mostly white town. It's becoming a little more diverse, but I think back when you arrived in 2001, it was not diverse at all, right?
So I think especially at this time that we're facing right now with the new Supreme Court decision of affirmative action, I feel like colleges and students really will have to be a little bit more creative about I
Hmm.
guess showing what it like the benefits of having a diverse community and like what they can bring
Yeah.
to the table more tangibly, being diverse than obviously like just checking off a box being like, I'm Latinx and like I should get a higher chance of getting in. And I think of course that was like the original intent behind affirmative action. We're just going to have to be a little bit more creative in figuring out how to do that, I guess. And I think like, and I try this very often, it's really like inspiring kids and other individuals to have people that look like them do the professions that they love. That's why, you know, whenever I have
Absolutely.
kids that come in, when I'm working as a doctor in vaccine clinics and stuff, I always like pull out my stethoscope. I'm like, oh, do you guys want to listen to the heart or whatever? Because like just to kind of inspire and get those young minds working to be like, hey, like this is a cool profession and you don't have to work with old people like you do with your human doctor. You can work with puppies and kittens and it's really awesome. And um I think like if you do it in a way that's planned out and calculated, it can be, you know, at least logistically affordable. And I think, you know, student loan debt, that's a whole other conversation of like how
Yep.
bad it really is. And that's something that I'm going to be facing right now. So I owe approximately $136,000 in vet school debt.
Wow. That's
But I'm
significant.
also very proud of that number because it is substantially lower
Yes.
than a lot
Yes.
of my classmates, and the average, which for veterinarians is around 190.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's very good.
definitely, I know. So I'm proud of it, and it's going to be, you know, very well within my means to pay off. But I
Hmm.
think, as with everything, both like, you know, showcasing these professions, but also a decent amount of financial literacy needs to
Hmm.
come in at
Financial literacy.
various
Yep.
different levels of um, education through high school and colleges and beyond. Because even an undergrad too, a lot of these kids don't realize like what they're signing up for when they sign up for these student loans, and how compounding interest works, and how like unfortunately, you know, when you're working on a student budget and your income is your student loans, that like, you know, $6 Starbucks coffee that you pick up doesn't just cost $6, it costs the $6 plus the compounding interest of 25 years down the line of what you're
Right.
paying back. So I think definitely government, schools have to really start drilling that into kids' brains, because it's really hard as a young person to be able to envision like what am I like, how is this going to financially affect me in you know,
Absolutely.
15 years from now. And I think
And
I
I'm
was
curious.
go ahead.
I'm curious on that. There's the higher ed piece. There's, you mentioned affirmative action. You know, also for persons, professions such as yourself to be a role model, right? To reach out to young people, to young, you know, boys and girls of color or immigrants.
Mhm.
One of the questions I also curious about, just in like, what was your experience arriving in Maynard, growing up in Maynard, being, you know, probably one of the few immigrant families in Maynard.
I think it's like what what I said in vet school. It meant so much when I saw people in school that looked like me, and like professors that looked like me. So the fact that I didn't have that growing up really was, I don't know, I just, like I said, I didn't feel like I was ever going to be able to make it. And I think
Yeah.
fact that my mentor that convinced me to go to vet school was a young black person, who
Yeah.
said it was often
Yeah.
mistaken for a janitor during his vet school experience. I think that really was like, wait a second, so you are also a person of color and you made it and you're doing well and you made it in a way that's affordable really meant a lot. So being able to, I don't know, I think like for people that see themselves every day, so like white students that see their white professors and teachers every day, I
Absolutely. Yeah.
don't, so like I don't think they even like can picture or fathom how important it is to see, you know, to see themselves in the future, because they do, they see it all the time. But yeah, I had never, I mean, to this day, other than my professors in vet school, I had never met another Brazilian that was a veterinarian, mother mind, or an
Mhm.
MD or another professional role. And of course, part of that was, from a documentation perspective, maybe it's just not the community that I grew up in.
Right.
But even like now I look back, the amount of, especially working here in Massachusetts, the amount of Spanish speaking and Brazilian clients that I'm going to be able to help
Oh,
and going
yes.
to be able to like really go beyond just okay, your dog needs this vaccine and it needs this and this
Right.
and that.
Right.
Like just being able to say, like, I know, just being able to understand that this is not how these people raise their pets in Brazil. And this is not the standard of pet care that was in Brazil. So it's not that like, I'm trying to rip all this money from you. It's that, here, the society, like most children don't have intestinal parasites, which, maybe is different in other countries. So we don't expect our dogs to have intestinal parasites either. So
Uh,
it's just that different standard of medicine that
mhm.
sometimes people don't understand. And like when you're able to talk to people in that way or even in their language, they're much more receptive to doing that preventative care and
Sure.
doing
Sure.
that instead of 4 or 5 years down the line just bringing you a sick pet when they have no money to take care of it. Because yeah, the cost of living here is obviously different from Brazil or other countries, so the cost of pet care is expensive and like people need to
Yeah.
be prepared. But being able to talk to people in that way from the very start, even in preventative care, and then again, once I'm an ER doctor, being able to do that as well is really going to make a world of difference. And just again, that language thing, be able to speak to people in their language and understand, like, oh, this dog is named Popcorn in Portuguese. It's not pipoca, and that's not a weird word. It's just a different language, and that means so much to so many people. So that's one of the things I'm
Absolutely.
excited about working here in the state.
And so going to school, and then there was what, residency requirement as well? Is that correct?
So vet school, you can choose to do a residency if you want to specialize or become a diplomat in certain subjects. So like if you want to be a veterinary cardiologist or a dentist or
Mhm.
a veterinary surgeon, those kind of things you can specialize in. But if you want to be what we call a general practitioner, which would be the human equivalent of a family medical doctor, you don't have to specialize, which is really, really nice. And definitely like a big perk to being in this profession.
Sure.
In
You
my choice, I'm
practice.
going to be doing, huh?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I mean, I've seen you from social media. You've been practicing. You've had
Yeah. Yeah.
clinicals. You've
So
had internships.
exactly. So once you get your license, you can go ahead and practice veterinary medicine at the level of what's called a general practitioner. So like equivalent to your human medical special, like a family doctor in human medicine. But if you want to specialize or you want to get additional training, there's internships, there's residencies, in a lot of different fields. What I'm going to be doing, because right now in this gap that I've had between vet school and starting my job, I've been doing vaccine clinics, which is held at different,
Huh.
pet codes around the state. And it's just what it sounds. It's a lot of people of like several different economic classes just coming in and just getting their pets vaccinated. And it's
Wow.
usually a very quick and easy, like 10 minute thing that I'm able to just like hit the highlights. And unfortunately, it is a lot of people that it's cheaper. So it's a lot of pets that are at a lower socioeconomic status. So I
Mm-hmm.
have very quick few minutes to touch base with owners, like the most important things about vet care and for their pets. And again, there's a lot of immigrant people, populations coming through there that I'm able to just like hit the highlights and be like, okay, you need this, this,
Mm-hmm.
this, and that. And then when you're speaking to them in their language or at that level or just kind of understanding where
Right.
they're
Right.
coming from, people are a lot more receptive. But yeah, so I'm going to be doing a 7 month like mentorship training program where I'll
Okay.
be trained more surgery, endoscopy, more ultrasound work, and just more
Hmm.
exotic species. So by the end of it, hopefully, I'll be able to treat not only cats and dogs, but also, rabbits and guinea pigs and lizards and snakes and
Okay.
everything that comes in through our door, which is going to be so exciting and just a heck of a lot of fun.
Yeah. What I mean, and I know your first day officially is tomorrow, but what is it given, you know, your family's, struggles, given all of your hard work, given everything you did to achieve this? What is it like to be a veterinarian now? What is the experience? What's the feeling?
Oh my God, like it every single time someone calls me doctor, still like I still want to cry because it's just like it's like we said, it's so like first doctor in the family. I have 17 aunts and uncles. My grandmother is like, yes, we finally have a doctor. And yeah, some of them are a little salty that I chose to go into veterinary medicine instead of human medicine. But they still like recognize that I have the title behind my name, and it's just such a huge honor, just really to be able to take what I love, and be able to really like help that old lady with her 16-year-old chihuahua that wants to eat everybody except for her. And you just see how happy she is, or like, the autistic kid that has a cat that he loves, and the mom is there like, please help me save this cat because this is the only thing that bonds my autistic kid to the world. Or I worked for a couple weeks in a guide dog school for guide dogs of the blind,
Oh,
and those
wow.
dogs helping blind individuals and service dogs, like, oh my god, like it's definitely one of my dream professions if I ever make it there, because like those dogs do so much for their care, like for their handlers, and they're literally, the eyes of the blind community, and that was such an honor to be able to help those dogs out. So just definitely like I'm so excited obviously about petting all the cute puppies and kittens, but really I know how much my cats have helped me out, and I've seen how much my friends' dogs have helped them out both emotionally and again in some ways physically for service dogs. And it's just really honorable to be able to just take this skill that I love so much. And I
That's
think just it's such a privilege to be able to like go into work every day and like know that you were doing something that you truly love and enjoy. And yeah, there's going to be tough times, and there's going to be poop sometimes, and it smells gross and vomit and whatever. But like, how privileged am I in this world that I get to, do something, be part of that, less than 1% with a graduate degree, that I get to did exactly what I, sought out to do. And that's going to be my career for the rest of my life, and it's just
that's
so special.
That's wonderful. Well, I'm so proud of you, and Thamires, thank you so much for telling your story and talking about the challenges of veterinarian school and your family's experiences as immigrants from Brazil. So I want to thank Dr. Thamires Nunes. I love saying that every
Thank
time I
you.
say it.
Thank you.
So proud of you, and thanks so much for joining us on another edition of Uplifting Voices. We'll be broadcasting it on all social media soon. So Tamira, it's great to see you, and good luck on your first day of work. Okay.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you all.